The billions echo strong. The journey goes lifelong.
Bit of a follow-up to my previous chat about living truthfully and the challenge of living with integrity in our era of confusion and inversion and reality distortion and the fake reality machine that we exist within. Some of us may have experienced this directly or even considered these kind of ideas ourselves especially in recent years, given the events of 2020 to even up until this year and continuing in different ways and morphing into different ways and different narratives proliferated throughout society. Some are born with a much more sensitive nature to energies and ideas and suggestions. Many, especially in recent years, have decided to check out, quite literally, whether that came through, a sudden health challenge that they couldn't overcome, whatever it might be. They manifested a way to basically just check out of this game for now. Because they were unable perhaps to contend and reconcile with these extreme energies and polarities and duality, but the lies, deception, and just the animosity and general negative bent that our reality is offering to us in this particular era, in this particular time. Again, confusion, inversion. And this isn't to disparage anyone, nor their choices, nor the hows and whys they went about it, because I'm speaking more in the grander sense of the reality construct, soul purpose kind of ideas, right? There's ultimately no judgment for any of these particular things, how and in whatever way we choose to come in to this particular life, to this avatar, to this life experience, whether it's for a short time or a full lifetime. It's completely up to us how we choose to go about it and whether or not we want to cut it short. And there are so many ways, that we can essentially end the physical experience based on the metaphysical and what came before. And people that are born with a little more sensitivity, as much as we think that we can pretend to toughen up and to, grow some thicker skin and these kind of ideas, that's simply not possible for some people. And especially in this era, I think there's a heightened energy about it on either side of the fence. There's a heightened ability of those of us who do persist, stick to it, overcome, and learn to find that balance, or learn to find ways to be, say, more resilient and self-reliant in a metaphysical, spiritual, esoteric kind of sense, as well as, of course, the physical and material ways that these things play out too, because as I was speaking in the previous video, you need the money. You need ways to sustain yourself in this realm of capitalism and commerce, and part of that is, as with everything, starts in the metaphysical, in the pre-physical, in the potentiality of the field and your energy, your thoughts, ideas, intentions, and such, that will ultimately play out in the physical. So it's not for us to know the hows and whys and the reasonings of any particular soul's journey, why they choose a particular life or how they choose to exit. If it's, sudden and allegedly unexpected, and why they might be doing such a thing. But as I'm trying to explain, there's a volatility and a certain charge to the energy of this place right now in our era. And some simply cannot contend or reconcile with that, or find a way to exist in it, or perhaps are aware of on some level of things that are coming down the pipe, as it were. Stories and narratives that we can do little to nothing to change the particular trajectory of, and that we all signed up for on some level to go through and experience in this time of upheaval and reformation, whatever it might be. And it's not to say that that isn't always happening, because obviously it is. It's not like we're in a completely unique time in history. We are, again, however, in a particular time in a cycle, you could say, whether it's the Kali Yuga or however you want to frame that based on your research and study, comprehension and understanding of what's really going on here. And the particulars, it's up to you, whatever resonates and makes sense to you, and however you want to decode that for yourself and make sense of it. And some of us will find a way. The vast majority will simply go along to get along, as they always do, because they came here to be, the willing participant, the ignorant, the blind, dumb, and daft fool. And that's perfectly fine if that's what a soul chose to do. If in fact it is a genuine soul, or not simply like a background player and something that's just a filler for the rest of us to observe, right? And get data and information from a reflection of some sort of our own projection. Something that fills in the background scenery for us to be able to live our own lives and to make decisions for ourselves in one way or another. And I'm not trying to make light of anything, especially ideas of suicide and cancer and all the ways that the avatar can fail us, consciously or unconsciously, right? None of these things just happen by accident. I'm of the mind that we can quite literally heal from virtually anything if we give the right circumstances, give the avatar the right kind of fuel, the right kind of rest, the right kind of routines. It's a natural self-balancing, self-healing thing if that is our greater intention, which we may not be completely consciously aware of. So in the short term, we might put ourselves through all sorts of pain, suffering, and struggle, not realizing that on some level we made an ultimate decision that, this thing was going to be bookended in a certain way. And then, of course, those around us are trying to interpret things from their own perspectives and motivate or inspire or, protect us from certain ideas and ideations and potentialities. Again, not knowing the reasoning, the deeper purpose, what the soul was going to be doing here in its short time. And again, I've said this before, whether you're here for 8 seconds, 8 minutes, or 80 years, that's not a very long time at all. And some of us, of course, had a very visceral experience and probably a very personal experience of these events, especially 2020 to, 23, and the repercussions of which are still continuing today, especially for those who decided to, do the injection thing, which was foolish and ignorant, but on some level that was decided beforehand and they chose to participate. And perhaps now they're learning about the folly of those types of decisions. Regardless, not everyone did. And other people who participated directly or indirectly were affected, of course, on the energetic, spiritual, and psychic level of this particular adventure. And these cumulative energies, these distortions, these negative impacts are, for some, as I was saying, extremely difficult to reconcile and dispel and even downregulate. And so, if they get to a point where they can't find a way to get through it, they might just say, that's enough. I'm done with this particular thing. I don't want to deal with this anymore or what's coming up. If it happens again, when it happens again, in whatever shape or form it might take. I've had enough. Let's take a break, move on, and end this particular story. And that, of course, leaves a lot of the rest of us with questions and concerns and worries, frustrations. And of course, we miss the people that we cared for and loved and the part that they played in our particular story. So that's not easy to let go and just set aside, regardless of our particular belief structure. We certainly do live in interesting times, but anybody can say that about any particular time because there's certain eventualities and elements to this civilizational type narrative that are in constant flux, regardless of the era that you might have been born into and regardless of the geopolitical situation, regardless of what the world looks like, what the map has been drawn to be. This is a simple nature of this reality. It's an endemic part of that reality-making script. So regardless of what time you came into and what particular structure of reality that you're experiencing, there's going to be that certain element of society that's going to question things and wonder and be curious and have difficulty reconciling with what's happening and what they're feeling inside, reconciling with what is being imposed and thrown at them from the outside, the stories and the narratives that are going to, fly in the face and conflict and contrast with something else that they feel inside that just feels there's a dissonance, right? There's a disparate nature, a different kind of resonance and frequency to it that they can't quite make sense of. So I think if you're still here, you've decided to stick around, you've decided to figure it out, you've decided to somehow integrate these ideas, and or, as I mentioned in the previous video, you've come to a certain realization or some part of you understands that you are made of tougher stuff, perhaps you're made of a different sort of makeup and a character that allows you to persist and to integrate and reconcile and work with what is being offered from the story, from the world, from the reality out there, and learn to work from the inside out so that not everything that's assaulting your senses and energies and beliefs and ideas is a form of resistance or needing to be resisted and fought and, stood up against, and all these ideas that can be quite exhausting and fatiguing if you're constantly of that mind that you need to, stand up for something and resist and fight and revolt, and all these ideas that only serve those who are causing these particular problems and imposing these particular systems upon us. And they know full well on how to manipulate vast swaths of society to believe one thing or another. I don't think it serves us to fall into those kinds of traps, because there's no end to them. There's no end to these rabbit holes. There's no end to that cycle. It's more a personal thing. It's more a familial thing. It's more a community thing. It's more the inside out, very personal inside out sort of process and story making idea. And for those of us who continue on and are curious, perhaps in some morbid sense, about what is to come and what can come up this place and what will emerge in the coming years and decades, remember that you are the sovereign creator being, and that you're here for a reason, and that you are capable, more than capable, of contending with whatever it is that's going to be thrown at you. And of course, not that it's all going to be a contest and a battle and a war and all these things. However, given the era that we live in and the reality of what the world is presenting, just be honest. Be honest with yourself about what it is, what you see, and what you desire to take from it, how much you want to integrate and get yourself involved in any particular narrative and story, social structure, that kind of thing, right? Decide for yourself how much you want to participate, if at all. And there are ways to limit your exposure to it. There are ways to use ideas of natural law and such to limit your exposure, limit their particular ability to interject and intrude and interrupt and invade and impose upon you any ideas and machinations of the system that it is. So you might need to educate yourself about these things, and there are plenty of experts and people out there that are doing workshops and the like that can offer you that kind of information. Do your due diligence, of course, and see how they are living before you simply buy into anything they're offering. But, find the ways and means to educate yourself to overcome that barrier that's usually just psychological, spiritual, metaphysical, so that going forward, come what may, you have a surer, more confident step about you, a more deliberate process, and a more spiritual sort of confidence, right, in a way about you that allows you to step into that unlimited energetic energy that does exist within you, that animates and sustains you. It's unlimited, right? And the more we can take back the ways in which it is being siphoned off and parasitized and predated upon, the more we can utilize it in our own specific and conscious ways for our own purposes. One of the rather strange, I don't know if it's a side effect or simply just the nature of the beast and the way that government works, is especially in Canada and a lot of Western Empire, is these programs that have emerged in recent years, such as MAiD, which is assistance in suicide, offered by our good old pals in central government authorities, who were very much instrumental in creating the shit show that was the fraud of 2020. Beginning in 2019 and being built up in the public consciousness and the zeitgeist over the 20 to 30 years previous through, as I've spoken about many times, through indoctrination and propaganda, through media and film and TV shows and books. These ideas, predictive programming that was systematically injected into the ideas, and these smaller little outbreak things that happened, which were all complete hoaxes and frauds, because that just doesn't happen. That's not how reality works. That's not how the human body works. There's no such thing as this contagion that flies around and attacks you and replicates and moves on to the next human. That's all just complete fiction that's useful for zombie movies and the like, right? And these films continue to be made and funded by the same parasitic and predatory forces as always. because there's profit in it. There's profit in the trillion-dollar cartel medicine business, and they need to justify all of that and continue that perpetual machine of profit-making that is pharmaceuticals and iatrogenic practices and allopathic medicine, which is a complete farce. And, it would be worth your time to educate yourself about that stuff. But as we know, in general, the policies and politics that happen, laws and things that are implemented are usually downstream from culture. So as we can see, these ideas of MAiD and government-assisted suicide, a tiny, tiny percentage of which could certainly be justified to, help people transition to alleviate their pain and suffering by their own choice and such, based on whatever circumstances get you to that point, which is fairly extreme, of course, right? But they've popularized it, they've made it even trendy in ways by introducing it and integrating it into the public discourse. And that's not by accident, right? We know the forces involved here. We know these ancient sort of energies, these parasites and predators that persist and exist throughout all of history. It's just another part of our human story. So it's not by any accident that these programs come out in line with the massive events such as the COVID fraud. There's no accident to that. These things play off of each other, and they're planned well in advance, and they're well funded by the same entities in the same industries that profit all the way around. There's profit even in death, obviously, right? In the funeral business and all these things. It's a multi-billion, perhaps multi-trillion-dollar industry, this life and death sort of thing, playing with human lives and everything that leads from birth to death, and all the protocols and injections and medications and procedures and unnecessary nastiness that is allopathic medicine, that, every step of the way somebody's earning a few bucks. Not only that, it's more psychological and mind control and social engineering as well, right? The more you can persist with these big lies, the more you can control a certain collective consciousness to do your bidding in ways. Except for us, that tiny little percentage of people that are awake and aware and have to struggle with the idea of, as I've been saying throughout this particular talk, sticking around and wanting to participate anymore, and those who simply cannot and decide not to, and the ways that they check out. Make of that as you will, decide as you will, judge how you will about the particulars. I'm not making any judgment one way or the other. I'm just speaking to the principle of the idea, as I'm always trying to do so. The underlying ideas, the principal notions, the foundational sort of energies that maintain us and give us reasons to live, reasons to persist, reasons to define and discern our priorities and values and what we want to experience in this one short life. And given the nature of the energies of this particular era, how we're going to, if we're going to contend with it, if we're going to find ways to integrate and deal with everything that is presented, and how we want to take advantage of our creative potential, and how we want to take advantage of what we're truly capable of when we truly step into that power that we know is ours by default, right? And if you are particularly sensitive to these things, if you find yourself frequently being overwhelmed or just, having difficulty contending with the stories, the ideas, the incessant mind control stuff, the never-ending traumas and headlines and emergency this and that and prepare this and that and worry this and that, find a way to dispel those kinds of energies. Find people that you can express these ideas with and talk it out, ask for help if you need to. Find friends and family and like-minded spirits where you can just share these things and talk it out, because every single one of us are going through the same thing. Don't think that your struggles and pains and the torturous nature of these cyclical thoughts and the pain and anxiety, don't think that it's something that you have to do and figure out on your own. That's another part of that reality distortion that's presented, is that we isolate and separate. That was another massive part of the frauds and hoax of the events of 2020 onward, the idea of separation and distancing and all these mind control and social engineering aspects that came into that play, that those who were behind the scenes and making these things happen knew full well that it would destroy social fabric, that it would destroy families and relationships, that it would destroy businesses and careers and on and on and on. But fundamentally, it would destroy that interconnectivity, that social fabric that's integral to a healthy society and a healthy community and a healthy family. Even singular relationships, you and your loved one, you and your partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever you want to call it. Even that, right, was a wedge was driven into these places of most sacred union and love and caring and compassion and empathy. And it was extremely effective. But, again, taking a few steps back from that whole story, while we can be angry and frustrated and furious about how it played out, on some level we agreed to participate. We agreed to co-create that. So we got to take back our power again, even if for a time it was borrowed, it was stolen, it was taken away, it was siphoned off. Even if for a time our psychology was fucked around and twisted and distorted. Even if for a time our hearts were being attacked and our nervous system was constantly on alert and constantly being activated, and we just couldn't find a way to down-regulate and deal with these onslaughts of emotions and what the world was throwing at us, what our friends and family was throwing at it, what the screen narratives were throwing at us and continue to throw at us, lying and misrepresenting the world at large about essentially everything. Because if you're not really experiencing something in person, if you're not seeing it with your own eyes and experiencing it with your own senses, you have no concept of what's really happening, even down the street, never mind in another country, in another nation, somewhere else, where you're only ever seeing a story, a picture, a video clip of whatever it might be, a headline. You have no concept of what is really happening. But you can you can rest assured that it is all part of the same system. Whether it's capital or money or what have you, whether it's the idea of pharmaceuticals and cartel medicine, it exists in every nation. This whole story played out across the realm. So nothing was really safe except for a few small nations here and there, a few community-based sort of things. So don't think you're alone. Don't isolate yourself. If you have struggles and if you're suffering and if you're in pain and having difficulty contending with all these things, talk it out, find some ways to get counsel or find some outlets to dispel that energy, use it creatively, transmute it into something else, create with it, use that, reclaim that authority, that agency, reclaim that energy, that creative power, and put it to good use in some other ways. And see, you might surprise yourself in the ways that you can find that could also have a knock-on effect and benefit many, many other lives, to remind them again who and what they are, to remind them again that they're not alone, to remind them again that they chose to be here and that ultimately they're capable of far more than they've been inculcated, socially engineered, programmed, conditioned, predictively programmed to believe they are. We're far more than this story ever tells us. And that's perhaps the point of being in the first place, to live under the illusion and delusions and to live in a place of confusion and inversion, just to see what we're truly capable of. And ultimately, nothing that is real and true about us, as I've said many times now, can come to harm, right? The essence of who and what we are is perfectly safe and perfectly immortal. So whatever we're doing here, however we choose to experience life on this plane, in this realm, only happens here. So, dive in. If you find yourself getting caught up in the stories and the narratives, getting more and more sensitive, getting more and more attached to stories and ideas, especially if you have those you love and care about who are also being assaulted and affected and imposed upon, find a way to reframe it, reclaim it, take it back, reintegrate all those pieces that have been severed and fragmented and pulled into 100 different directions. Reclaim the story, write one anew, take back the pen, take back the authorship, and you'll probably find it's a little more easier every step of the way to contend with these energies and ideas. And you'll see through the false, the transparency of the facade and the masks and the fakery that persists across every institution, every government, every layer of this reality creation, this fake reality machine that we exist within for a short time. Take it back, reframe it, And I'll just reiterate what I said at the end of the last video. We're here because we're capable of contending with it. We're here because we are capable of rising above, integrating everything, all the nonsense and the noise. We're capable of rising above and seeing it for what it is. We're capable, more than capable, of transmuting everything that is offered, and everything is an offer. We're more than capable of integrating it, rising above, and reusing it in our own image, in our own way, for our own purposes. If and when we realize that we're capable of that, when we remember, and then just change the flow instead of outside in, allowing these things to assault you from the outside, flip the narrative inside out, start behaving and acting on the feeling of your own experiences, thoughts, intentions, motivations, purpose, priorities, etc. Just flip that energy flow, because from inside out, as I've mentioned, it's a spark, a flame that can never be put out. It's an energy that can never be exhausted, regardless of what's trying to steal it and redirect it and reappropriate it for whatever dastardly purpose they might have. Reclaim that, and remember, you're the ultimate sovereign creative spark, and that you chose to be here, and that you can make of it whatever you choose to make of it. Have a good one.
It's been coming down every other day, but they tell me we are in drought season. That's not my story, not my reality. No matter what you force my eyes to see, and the sky is falling right on top of me, but they tell me it's for the greater good that